Late Sri Nani Palkhiwala, lawyer, orator, and famously known for his budget speech in Brabant Stadium, where more than 100,000 people used to gather to listen him. And Sri R.K. Lakshman, the creator of The Common Man, which everyone knows. The first thing which everyone looks in Times of India newspaper is his cartoon. And to take us through lives of Nani Palkhiwala and Sri R.K. Lakshman, we can have no other better speaker than Dr. Dharmendra Bhandari, who has been closely associated with both the legendaries. It was very easy for me to introduce Dr. Dharmendra Bhandari because he has been a friend, philosopher, guide, and a fatherly figure to me from my inception of careers. Dr. Bhandari has a PhD in Commerce, CA with outstanding track record, currently is on the board of directors of JP Morgan India Mutual Fund, has been a former director of various banks, Dena Bank, Bank of Baroda, Bank of Maharashtra, and various listed companies in India. He has been the only chartered accountant who is the consultant to Joint Parliamentary Committee of Harshad Mehta scam. You all must be knowing that scam well. Officer on special duty with Reserve Bank, former council member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, a regular consultant to United Nations. Of late, he has been authored various books on banking and finance, and fortunately all books have been forwarded by Nani Palkhiwala, and R.K. Lakshman gave the cover page and design for all books. Recently, he has published a biography of Sri R.K. Lakshman with the name R.K. Lakshman, The Uncommon Man, and another book, best-selling book in India, Lord Ganesha, artwork by R.K. Lakshman, which received an appreciation by President Barack Obama. Currently, he is pursuing the biography of late Sri Nani Palkhiwala ji. May I request C. Arun Kotwani to present a flower bouquet to Dr. Dharmendra Bhandari, and may I request Dr. Bhandari to please come on the stage.
Chairman Sanjay Gupta ji, members of the Bahrain chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It's a great honor for me to be here in the Kingdom of Bahrain. This is in fact my first visit. I therefore thank the Bahrain chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for inviting me to the conference on finance professionals partners in nation building. Who could be more appropriate professionals than late Nani Palkhiwala and R.K. Lakshman, both conscious keepers of the nation? To speak on Nani Palkhiwala and R.K. Lakshman is not an easy task, not because there is not enough material on them, but more so because there is too much of material. First, I'll speak on the life and times of Nani Palkhiwala. Nani Palkhiwala was man of many parts, erudite scholar, outstanding jurist, staunch defender of the Constitution, social reformer, diplomat, and much more. He touched the hearts of many different persons in many different ways. He was perhaps the most strident critic of the government and the bureaucracy, but his criticism was based on principles, never on personalities, and he commanded the highest respect and admiration. What made him remarkable is that though he walked with the kings, but never lost the common touch. Nani loved his country profoundly and believed passionately in the immense future and untapped potential of India and of its citizens. It was the failure of the government and the bureaucracy to unlock this potential that finally drove him to despair and despondency. The ultimate tragedy was that when in due course, India began to assume its rightful place in the world economy, his health betrayed him and rendered him oblivious to the resurgence to which he had so eagerly anticipated and to which he had so significantly contributed. Long back, Nani's family was apparently involved in the manufacture of palkis, the mode of public transport for the rich in olden days. An ancestor of Nani must have started the manufacture of palkis. This would explain the surname Palkiwala. But as the motor age arrived, the manufacture of palkis, not to speak of coaches, went out of fashion. At this point of time, Nani's father thought that setting up a laundry business did not call for much capital, and he could make it profitable. This led him to establishing 2 laundry shops in Mumbai. Thus, Nani came from a very ordinary family. He did not have a study to himself. He shared a bedroom with his siblings and also worked part-time from a young age. In 1953, Nani moved to the Commonwealth Building at Back Bay Reclamation and lived there for the rest of his life till 2002. Overcoming stammering. Nani started to stammer when he was young, and this continued for a few years before he finally conquered it. He once told a friend, I quote, "My stammering was so bad that on painful occasions I was literally tongue-tied. I could not even articulate the words which I wanted to speak." Fortunately, thanks to Nani's determined efforts, the stammering did not last long, and in his later teens, he participated in elocution competitions and won prizes too. He overcame stammering by exercise, as there were no medicines. Later on, he became one of the finest orators in the world. It was like a case where a person suffering from polio qualifies for the Olympic race. Working part-time. As a bright student, Nani attracted classmates and younger students who were less endowed and who wanted to be coached by him. They giving tuitions fetched him, Nani, a few rupees a month, which were promptly spent on buying books. A little-known fact is that Nani was working in the weekends at the Bombay Racecourse as a totalizer while studying for his law. To Nani, every rupee counted. The job demanded accuracy and speed. Nani's actual work would be for a few minutes immediately after each race ended. But Nani utilized the remaining time till the next race reading books. There is this bookshop, Popular Book Depot. In fact, Nani's love for reading is legendary. As a boy, he used to sit in a corner and browse books for hours at Popular Book Depot, a bookshop on Leamington Road near his house. He once mentioned that he would be the last person to leave the shop, and the kind proprietor, Mr. G.R. Bakhtal, would allow him to complete the book he was reading. Nani never forgot this generosity. Later, when he delivered a beautiful lecture on the art of reading in memory of late G.R. Bakhtal, at the meeting he paid rich tributes to Bakhtal, a well-deserved rich tributes, adding that had he been alive today, I would have touched his feet to show my reference to him. Nani could read very fast. He could easily finish 2 to 3 books a day. He had developed his own technique of rapid reading. He could read a full page in a few seconds. Over the years, he developed the art of speed reading. He could go through a book in record time, seldom missing out on relevant or important things. Nani started writing at a very young age. Throughout his college years, the problem was money. So Nani carried on giving tuitions even after joining St. Xavier's College. More significantly, he continued writing articles for newspapers, an interest he had developed from his school days. In an interview, Nani recounted how his heart beat faster When he went to post his first article, he was about 12 years old then, and he had written an article for the Parsi Gujarati paper Jame Jamshed, which also published some items in English. When he was barely 19 years old, he had an article accepted by the Times of India, by any account, a remarkable achievement. One of his earliest articles written when he was 17 was in response to the Bombay government's decision to introduce prohibition in the province, a move that hit the Parsis hard because most of them owned the liquor shops. Published by Jame Jamshed in October 1937, the article was entitled, "Prohibition is not prohibitive, it will end in promoting liquor." Another interesting aspect of Nani Palkhiwala was that he had the writer's cramp and he couldn't write. In 1940, Nani finished his BA with honors in English, and in 42, MA with honors in the same subject. In these exams, he could not complete his papers because the writer's cramp that was to haunt him for the rest of his life had begun to appear. When he appeared for his law examination, because of the writing cramps, he secured permission to use a writer. The writer recalled many years later as to what had happened in the examination hall that day. When the question paper was distributed, Palkhiwala went through it and sat staring for 10 minutes. The writer thought that Palkhiwala did not know the answers, and that's why he's sitting silently. However, once he began dictating, it was just a continuous flow of words without looking at the question paper again. A word about his photographic memory. Nani excelled in the art of concentration. He took upon one thing at a time and concentrated on it to the exclusion of other things. Once he observed, I quote, "Whenever there is something important, forget everything else and concentrate on just that. That way, it is easy to tackle any problem." In concentration, he was aided by the ability to go to the heart of the problem. This is a rare quality, and Palkhiwala was blessed with it. His photographic memory was phenomenal, as was his ability to speak for hours on a public platform without a single piece of paper, in the process endearing himself to the audience. At the Government Law College, Nani was a fellow student of the Government Law College from 1944 to 46, part-time lecturer in the same college from 1949 to 52, and later honorary professor of the college for many years. When class attendance in other departments suddenly dropped, the professors addressing their half-empty classrooms would realize that Nani would be giving his lecture in some other classroom in the college. Students of other classes and divisions would flock to Nani's classrooms to hear him speak. Nani was also the examiner of taxation papers of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and perhaps that could be one of the reasons why the pass percentage in olden days was very less. Meeting his wife, Nargesh. Nargesh apparently had made up her mind that if she were to marry anybody, it would be Nani. She drove a car, attended parties, liked to have a good time. Contrary-wise, Nani came from a poorer family, traveled by bus, train, or tram, was always busy with his studies and averse to parties. The marriage had the willing approval of both the families, and the wedding took place in 1945. Nani was then 25 years old. She was a solid support to Nani throughout his life. An interesting case about Nani Palkhiwala was on his book Law and Practice of Income Tax. We have all seen and read partly that book. That book was embroiled in a legal suit in 1950. A.C. Sampath Iyengar, a well-known advocate practicing in Madras High Court, in 1941, he had published his commentary on the Income Tax Act 1922. The second and third edition of the book came in 1945 and 1947. Sampath Iyengar, on reading the book Kanga and Palkhiwala, Law and Practice of Income Tax in 1950, felt that several portions of his book has been pirated and asked his solicitors to issue a legal notice to Kanga and Palkhiwala. A legal notice was issued in August 1951, claiming compensation for various acts of infringement of copyright, like adopting similar treatment and analysis, copying passages, characteristic phraseology, and coined expressions. On November 1951, Sampath Iyengar filed a suit in the Madras High Court under the Copyright Act. The two authors, he claimed, had cunningly changed words here and there, transferred passages from the footnotes to the body, and vice versa, in a dishonest attempt to camouflage their acts of piracy. A joint written statement was filed by Kanga and Palkhiwala denying all the allegations and infringement of piracy. Their commentary was the result of careful and independent study of each and every case cited in the book. Palkhiwala claimed that he had read not only the head notes but also the judgments in each case that was mentioned in the book. Kanga and Palkhiwala contended that the common phrases and sentences could be traced down to well-known decided cases which had been discussed in the book. These phrases and sentences had become the current coin of income tax law, and Iyengar could not claim any copyright to them. Their commentaries had followed the usual and established plan of legal commentary, and their style and expression was patently different. Even a cursory comparative glance at the two commentaries would clearly indicate the originality of thought, substance, expression, and presentation. They submitted that the plaintiff's charge of plagiarism and piracy were totally false, and Iyengar could not claim any copyright in the language and phraseology of the classic judgments, well-known legal expressions, and propositions. The interesting thing was Palkhiwala stood his cross-examination very well, and the answers he gave in the witness box virtually demolished the case of the plaintiff. In the witness box, he spoke on every issue, page-wise, case-wise, section-wise, by memory, as if he knew the entire book by heart. On the other hand, Iyengar did not fare well and had emotional outburst. The oral testimony of Palkhiwala and Iyengar has been commented upon by Justice Iyer as follows. I quote, "The examination of PW1 and DW1 was elaborate and detailed, and DW1, that is Nani Palkhiwala, fared better in cross-examination than PW1. He stood a detailed and skillful cross-examination exceedingly well and was not materially shaken on any point, and struck me as a competent and alert lawyer who was thoroughly conversant with the Income Tax Act and law and was very well informed with every part of his book and could give cogent account of any part of it regarding the scheme, arrangement, analysis, conclusion, criticism. He struck me as giving his evidence in a straightforward fashion. PW1, on his own book, was not able to stand the cross-examination so well because of his emotions and often gave answers which cannot be said to be satisfactory. He was not able, in some cases, to refer to his own portions in his own book, or to the Act, or to the Income Tax Manual, or decided cases so quickly as DW1, possibly due to his greater age. Memory notoriously is stronger in a younger man, unquote. Another interesting aspect about the book is that he wrote the entire book in his 20s, but came out with a joint authorship with Jamshed Kanga, another eminent advocate under whom he has started his practice, even though Kanga did not change even a comma or a full stop. We are all familiar with his budget talks and the association with the Forum of Free Enterprises. The Forum of Free Enterprise was set up in 1956 to educate the public on market economy. It began by organizing meetings and lectures on current economic issues. His first talk for the Forum of Free Enterprise was on December 2, 1957, on recent changes in the tax structure. On March 27, 1958, Palkhiwala gave the first of his celebrated annual budget lectures at Green's Hotel, Apollo Bandar. The place, now part of Taj Mahal Hotel, was a popular joint for such lectures. These lectures continued at the Green's Hotel till 1964, when the hall was found to be inadequate. From hall to the open air, in 1996, the first open-air budget lecture was delivered by Palkhiwala in the CCI East Lawns. Presiding over the lecture in 1982 on CCI East Lawns, Vijay Merchant, who was then the president of the Cricket Club of India, noted the overflowing crowd with every inch of the open ground being occupied by the masses. He suggested in his presidential remarks that from next year, the venue would be shifted to Brabant Stadium, where the cricket matches used to be held. Thus, from March 1983 till Palkhiwala's last public budget speech on March 6, 1994, he delivered lectures at the Brabant Stadium. The front rows would be filled up by celebrities like J.R.D. Tata, Naval Tata, Darbari Seth, Dhirubhai Ambani, and other Tata directors attended some of the meetings. When Mr. J.R.D. Tata came to meetings in Brabant Stadium, there was a great excitement and loud applause. The first talk would always be in Mumbai, followed by an analysis of the finance bill on the following day at a meeting arranged in CCI East Lawn venue by the Western India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Then Palkhiwala would go to Chennai, where the Southern India Regional Council of the Institute would arrange the meeting, and in Bangalore, where it was arranged by the Federation of Karnataka Chamber of Commerce in the huge Vidhan Sauda banquet hall. There would be talks at other places. At Calcutta, Netaji Subhash Auditorium would be full, with C.R. Irani of the Statesman making all the arrangements. In Delhi, most of the lecture meetings were held in Siri Fort under the auspices of the Northern India Regional Council of the Institute. It was interesting to see in the papers after the budget instant reactions, and the stock market also used to rise and fall with regard to the reactions. But again, there would be correction after Palkhiwala spoke on the budget provisions. There would again be the corrections on the stock market. Palkhiwala's reading of history, political science, philosophy, science, and other non-economic subjects added to the value of his budget analysis. His first love was English literature, in which he was well-versed, and the vast range of quotations from English classics, prose as well as verses, added to the value of his budget analysis. On top of all this was his touch of subtle humor. The way he reeled off statistics was an amazing phenomenon. Another important characteristic of his budget, as well as other public speeches, was his utter lack of malice. He never referred to public officials or bureaucrats by name when he was criticizing any measure, but generally praised them by name when appreciating. In fact, it is said that Nani was the best finance minister which India never had. Why did Palkhiwala discontinue his budget lectures? He said that on all major issues in his life, he had been guided by an inner voice which he would hear in night. In December 1994, he was suddenly woken up from his sleep at 2:30 a.m., and while he sat on his bed, the inner voice gave him directions. He obeyed it. The voice told him repeatedly that from next year onwards, he should not give his annual budget lectures. Hence, the budget talks discontinued in 1995 onwards. Nani spoke extempore till the age of 74. Reeling statistics, quoting great English poets, narrating incidents from history, and with a touch of humor, with a cascade of English prose, all without a piece of paper, Nalini Palkhiwala held the audience spellbound wherever he went. The word went around that he was not a mere orator, he was a phenomenon. Another interesting episode was a notice to Mother Teresa on her winning the Nobel Prize. When Nani heard that Mother Teresa is likely to be charged income tax on Nobel Prize she had received in 1979, Nani came down heavily on the law ministry. In his press statement, he said, I quote, "Some official of the law ministry is reported to have expressed the view that Mother Teresa may be held liable to Indian income tax in respect of the value of Nobel Prize. At the same time, some well-wishers of Mother Teresa have requested the finance ministry to give a special dispensation exempting her from taxation. The correct position in law is that Mother Teresa is not liable to Indian income tax in respect of the Nobel Prize, and therefore the question of giving her any special exemption does not arise. It is fallacious to assume that every receipt has to be either income or capital. Some receipts may just not be income, although they may not be on capital account either. A good example of such a receipt is a testimonial or a personal gift like the Nobel Prize. In short, Mother Teresa is not liable to taxation because the Nobel Prize is not income at all under the general law, nor is it covered by the artificial definition of income in Section 2, subsection 24 of the Income Tax Act. In my opinion, the matter is so clear that the Finance Ministry should accept with grace the proposition that it is entitled to any bite of the monies which are to go to the poorest of poor. To drive Mother Teresa to litigation would be an act of national disgrace. The law may be an ass, but it is not asinine enough to seek to tax a price which is a token of humanity's gratitude to the saint," unquote. And the matter ended there. Just a brief about Nani and some of the boards. In 1961, when Nani was 41, he was invited to join the Tatas as the legal advisor, and he became a director of Tata Industries. He was also director of ICICI and the Reserve Bank of India. In 1968, Nani was appointed as director of Tata Sons Limited. Later on, in 1971, he was appointed director of Tisco, Telco, and few other companies. But the most important aspect is that he was chairman of Tata Consultancy Services for about 24 years since the inception. And whatever Tata Consultancy Services today is, a large part of the credit goes to Nani Palkhiwala as chairman of that company. In the course of an interview on 14 July 2005, when Ratan Tata was asked by V. Sanghvi, editor of Hindustan Times, who he thought would have succeeded JRD, Ratan's response was Nani Palkhiwala. Nani was a very strong contender. It was only because he became such a vocal critic of the government that JRD Tata thought his political views might become a liability to the Tatas. To conclude this part, I am sure the life of Nani Palkhiwala would continue to inspire us for a very long time towards nation building. Now a little about the life and times of R.K. Lakshman. As you all know, Lakshman, the creator of Imitable Common Man, has won many awards, including the Padma Vibhushan as well as Magsaysay. In fact, the most enviable accolade came from Hema Malini. Many years ago, when someone asked Hema Malini whom she admired the most, prompt came the reply, R.K. Lakshman, of course. To be the dream man of the dream girl, now that's quite an achievement. Paradoxically, the book R.K. Lakshman that pays tribute to the genius of Lakshman has been written by Most Common Man. And in case you're wondering, it's me. I was a professor of accountancy in the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. Coming back to Lakshman, he needs no introduction. Suffice to say that he is loved all over the country and to Indians abroad, and he is extremely dear to me. My first brush with Lakshman was in 1985 at Nani's residence. The two men were great friends. And later, when I asked Lakshman to illustrate the covers of my financial monographs, upon Nani's suggestion, he accepted readily to my delight. Now, let me tell you a little more about the book. It begins with a sketch of genius, a biographical essay on Lakshman, which is followed by work of art, a look at art by Lakshman, from his beloved crows and Ganeshas to other subjects in watercolor, pastels, and ink. This book reveals to a new side of Lakshman, the artist. The next section is of caricature, the idea of bringing out the essence of a personality through credible exaggeration. The fourth section is humor, which is one of the most powerful weapons in the arsenal of the cartoonist. Finally, we have political cartoons, what Lakshman is best known for. Did you ever imagine how this 93-year-old man, as unassuming as the common man he created, reached such dizzying height? Born in 1921 in Mysore, he started sketching on the wall when he was just 3 years. It became his abiding passion. Lakshman paid little heed to school. In fact, he failed in Kannada, which disqualified him from entering intermediate college. But consolation came from his famous sibling, R.K. Narayan. He proudly declared that failure in English entrance examination did not deter him from becoming an outstanding novelist in English language. In fact, both the brothers used to fail in school and colleges. That emboldened Lakshman to pursue his art. He again encountered failure when he applied for admission to Sir J.J. School of Arts in Bombay. His work were rejected with the statement that they lacked talent. But Lakshman never gave up on his dream. Interestingly, few years later, he was invited as chief guest by the J.J. School of Art. One summer in Chennai, he read an item on postal strike and came up with his first political cartoon. Lakshman had found his niche. After rejections in Delhi for job at the Hindustan Times and the Indian Express, who later awarded him for his excellence, he briefly worked in the Free Press Journal, where he even shared a desk with Balasaheb Thackeray, who was also an eminent cartoonist. And then, since 1948, Lakshman found his home at the Times of India. What endeared Lakshman most to his devoted readers was undoubtedly his signature creation, The Common Man, the Lakshman's representation of every man. The key to Lakshman's success was his unerring ability to lampoon the establishment. He removed Nehru's Gandhi cap and exposed his bald pate. He invited the ire of Morarji Desai to the extent that he even held a cabinet meeting to try and muzzle the cartoonist. Interestingly, despite the criticism of the emergency, Lakshman and Palkhiwala were never arrested by Indira Gandhi. As for Rajiv Gandhi, Lakshman made him look more rotund, shortened his nose and tilted it upwards, and reduced the hair on his pate until people started to say that Rajiv had started looking like Lakshman's cartoon version. Let me share an interesting anecdote with you. It was a public joke about Rajiv Gandhi. When any problem was brought to his notice, he'll say, "I'll look into the matter." Once when Lakshman was introduced to Rajiv at a book release event, Rajiv observed, "I like your cartoons, but you make me look fat." Without batting an eyelid, Lakshman said, "I'll look into the matter." Unfortunately, Lakshman is not keeping good health. Otherwise, they would have been here, and they fondly recollect their visit in 1980s to Behran. To conclude, we need to get inspiration from the lives of eminent professionals, such as Nani Palkhiwala and R.K. Lakshman, who have contributed immensely towards nation building and who are conscious keepers of the nation. Finally, I once again thank the Behran chapter for inviting me. I look forward to another lively interaction with all of you. But for now, I thank you once again. You have been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.